And the truth, you know, love is all we need. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day. Just you and me. Well, send them your heart so they know that someone cares and their lives will be stronger and free as God has shown us.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? It's time for the final countdown. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
Good night, family and friends of Neal Middle School. I'm your principal, Mr. Espinal. I want to thank you very much for attending our virtual Black History Night celebration, a culmination of Black History Month activities. You will see Neal students performing songs, dance, and poetry and presenting information on the countries in the Americas that constitute part of the African diaspora, and more. Thank you again for coming, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Familia Latina, mi nombre es José Espinal y soy el director de la escuela secundaria aquí en Neal. Les quiero dar muchas gracias por venir hoy a celebrar nuestro programa virtual de Black History Month. Espero que pudieron ver a su hijo o a su hija interpretar canciones, bailar, recitar poemas y presentar información sobre los países de la diáspora africana en las Américas. Gracias por venir hoy y pasen buenas noches.
I know what the cage bird feels, alas, when the sun is bright on the upland slopes, when the wind stirs soft through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass, when the first bird sings and the first bud opes, and the faint perfume from its chalice steals. I know what the cage bird feels. I know why the cage bird beats his wings, till his blood is red on the cruel bars, for he must fly back to his perch and cling, when he fain would be on the bow a swing, and a pain still throbs in the old scars, and they pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wings. I know why the caged bird sings, ah me, when his wing is bruised and his bosom is sore. When he beats his bar and he would be free, it is not a carol of joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know why the cage bird sings.
Welcome back. Yeah, man, how you doing? You good? I know you like that.
In the last Black History Night, we focused on African American history, looking at where we originated, where we are,
Let it resound. Let it resound.
struggles we are still facing.
My kind, every day, I'm being hard to disgrace. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just wanna live.
And where we are going. We ended up by asking the question,
What are you gonna do?
What are you going to
What are you going to do to be a part of the solution?
this year we are digging a little deeper and looking into who the people of the American descent in the Western Hemisphere, part of the Black diaspora. The African diaspora is the worldwide collection of communities descended from Native Americans, Africans, or people from Africa, predominantly in the Americas. The term most commonly refers to the descendants of the West and Central Africans who were enslaved and shipped to the Americans via the Atlantic slave trade between the 16th and the 19th centuries, with the largest population in the United States, Brazil, and Haiti. Join us tonight with learning about these countries and taking a closer look at how we are all connected.
%82% of Grenadia's population are black.
Early 20th century, the majority of the urban population of the country was Afro-white.
Martinique's population is descended from African descent. They represent the largest
82.5% of the country's population.
66% of the population of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are of
They
African
account
descent.
for about 35% of the population. However,
Shine bright like a diamond. Shine bright like a diamond. Shine bright like a diamond.
Black Barbadians or African Barbadians are Barbadians of entirely or predominantly African descent. 92.4% of Barbados' population is black and 3.1% is multiracial, based on estimates in 2010.
The idea of celebrating Black history will always be of special significance to Barbados. Barbados, unfortunately, is the island where, in the words of our Prime Minister, the modern institution of racism in the Americas was perfected. If we understand that one of the consequences of the impact of transatlantic slavery was to render Black history as something to be treated with contempt and derision, then we have a solemn and moral obligation, both to our ancestors and to future generations, to redeem our legacy as something of worth and value.
Though Belize is located in Central America, culturally it is a part of the Caribbean. Slaves were brought to Belize from Jamaica. The Belizeans of African descent constitute approximately 25% of the population.
Or what really comes to mind when you hear that, the celebration of Black history?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me in Belize, that there are two black groups in Belize. We've got a lot of different cultural groups, but there are only two black groups in Belize. And although we are two black groups, our ancestry is Africa and St. Vincent and those places there. So we have culturally, there are cultural differences.
For you personally, and what you have observed in your lifetime, what does it mean to be black?
And a child, I love being black.
He won't make it, no, they can't save him. Why look at me? Jumping at the car, not speed.
The first enslaved Africans were taken to Cuba in 1513. In 1886, Cuba finally abolished slavery, the last Caribbean territory to do so. The end of legal slavery, however, did not bring racial harmony to Cuba.
Afro-Cubanismo was an artistic and social movement that began in the 1920s, born out of the tense racial climate in Cuba, which continued to see Afro-Cubans oppressed, marginalized, and murdered based on the color of their skin. By contrast, Afro-Cubanismo sought to celebrate and give value to Afro-Cuban culture and contribution to Cuban society. Things changed drastically in Cuba following the 1959 Cuban Revolution. Under the Castro government, all forms of discrimination and institutional racism became illegal. However, since the Cuban Revolution, the government's dogged insistence that racism has been eliminated in Cuba has made it difficult for activists and intellectuals to raise legitimate concerns over the issue of discrimination against Afro-Cubans.
Did you know diasporically that the Sherlock Holmes of Black history and the person who amassed the largest collection of Afro-descendant texts is a Black Puerto Rican? The father of Black history, Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, was a historian, writer, activist, collector, and important figure of the Harlem Renaissance. Schomburg's dedication was ignited while in grade school when one of his white supremacist teachers claimed that Blacks had no history, heroes, or accomplishments. Inspired to prove his bigoted teacher wrong, Schomburg determined that he would find and document the accomplishments of Africans and Afro-descendants. He was a mentor to Langston Hughes and Claude McKay and collaborated with many African-American leaders such as W.E.B. Du Bois, Charles S. Johnson, and Alain Locke. In 1926, he sold his collection of literature, art, slave narratives, originally stored and cataloged in his home in Brooklyn, to the New York Public Library for $10,000. This laid the foundation for one of the world's richest archives for the study of Black cultures and experiences.
The first individual of African origin arrived in Puerto Rico in 1509. Since from the 1950s have not included ethnicity, and it is difficult to quantify Afro-Puerto Ricans as a percentage of the population. Estimates range from 22% to 65%, but currently there are 285,874 Puerto Ricans of African descent.
Colombia has the third largest Black population outside of Africa and the second largest Latin America, after Brazil with a population of 4.9 million.
Guys, check out this artwork right here. This is basically the story of Palenque in some artwork, okay? So you see the guy with the hand in the chain that was a slave, okay? He was from Africa, then he ended up in South America, and he still has the same culture pretty much.
When you come here, you feel like it. That's energy. That's vibes. And we come from the same part. We come from the same fight. We are the same people. We are the same. A lot of people think that Colombia is only drugs. Colombia is only white people. Yeah. Colombia is more than here. Diversidad.
Diverse.
Slave ships first arrived in Ecuadorian ports in 1553, and slaves worked on plantations and in gold mines. Although slavery was abolished at independence in 1822, the descendants of enslaved Africans continue to suffer the consequences of that socio-economic system. Currently, Ecuador's Afro population is 1.2 million.
It wasn't until 2001 that the first national census included a question about ethnicity and actually quantified the Afro-Ecuadorian population. Sadly, Afro-Ecuadorians remain woefully underrepresented in the political arena. Slowly but surely, however, things are changing. Since 1997, October 2nd has been celebrated as Afro-Ecuadorian Day.
Afro-Salvadorians are descendants of Africans brought to El Salvador during the transatlantic slave trade. Self-identified Afro-Salvadorians make up just 13% of the population, but this number may be larger.
Guatemalans of African descent comprise 1 to 2% of the population. They are mainly English-speaking West Indian and Garifuna origin.
Black Hondurans are of African descent and make up around 2% of the population. However, some estimates have found this to be as high as 30%.
They descended from African enslaved by the Spanish as well as those enslaved from West Indies and the Caribbean. Racism against Afro-Hondurans is a well-documented issue. However, positive developments have been occurring in Honduras.
Afro-Nicaraguans, who account for 9% of the population, form 5 distinct ethnic groups. The history of the Afro-Nicaraguans is a complicated one today. Negative stereotypes keep many from embracing their history. Still, many activists continue to fight for greater recognition of the Afro-Nicaraguans in society.
Afro-Costa Ricans represent about 8% of the total population. A large portion descends from waves of the late 19th and 20th century Afro-Caribbean migrant workers, mostly from Jamaica.
Y para mí, ser afro-costarricense significa tener orgullo de mi color de piel, de mi cabello.
Significa estar orgullosa de mi cultura y de lo que hemos hecho.
Es algo que llevo con mucho orgullo, por lo que agradezco.
Muy orgullosa de ser afrodescendiente costarricense, orgullosa de mi madre, mis abuelos y mis abuelas que me enseñaron sus culturas.
I am a woman, I am Latina, and I am Black. And I am super proud to be all of those.
Afro-Panamanians represent about 24.5% of the country's population, increasing from 9.2% over the last 10 years. The Afro-Panamanian population can be mainly broken down into two categories: those who are descendants of slaves brought to Panama during the colonial period, and those descended from West Indian immigrants who were brought in to help build the Panama Canal. Throughout the 1960s, Afro-Panamanians began to organize themselves more politically. However, today many Afro-Panamanians still experience inequality and marginalization. However, the government has taken more positive steps in the recent years to promote greater equality and rights for the community.
1.38 million Mexicans, or 1.2% of the population, identified themselves as having African ancestors. For years, Afro-Mexicans had been largely ignored in comparison to the indigenous peoples. In 1992, the Mexican government officially recognized African culture as being one of the 3 major influences on Mexican culture. In December of 2015, for the first time ever, the Mexican government recognized Afro-Mexicans as citizens.
Black Canadians make up 3.5% of the total population and include African descendants who are citizens or permanent residents of Canada. Black people arrived in Canada in many waves. The first of these came as free persons serving in the French Army or Navy, while some were indentured servants. Black Canadians form the 3rd largest minority group in Canada and contribute to many aspects of Canadian culture.
I too see America. I am the darker brother. They send me tea in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America.
I am the king, I am the chief, I am the leader that's fighting for peace. You see the squad, I got the keys. There is no surrender, we will not leave. So
African Americans account for about 46,900,733, or 14.2% of the USA population. African American history begins in the 16th century, when Africans from West Africa were sold by European slave traders, transported across the Atlantic to their 13th colony. It is impossible to summarize the ensuing struggle for equality led by many historic individuals throughout centuries. In 1 minute, however, their sacrifice, American cultures continue to be an important part of our society. It deserves to be recognized and celebrated whenever it is possible.
to the king, respect my throne. Yeah, we here now, don't be scared now. Y'all know we about to tear this down. Yeah, we here now, don't be scared now. Y'all know we about to tear this down. You think I'm playing with y'all? I got a brain in your claws.
The strength, the power of Black America lies in, how would you finish that?
The strength and power of Black America lies in the souls and the spirits of little Black girls and boys.
The power of Black America, I think, rests
almost entirely in its ability to survive all that it has, all that we have, and to still be able to laugh and dance and ache and fracture and reform and become something completely different and amazing and beautiful.
It lies in our ability to talk to each other and communicate with each other and stay together. It lies in the ability for us to act, to begin to try to act as one.
In its capacity to speak universal truth to power. We often think of Black people speaking for Black people, but Black people have in this country often spoken truly for the significance and meaning of democracy because they felt the absence of it more than any other population.
Where would we be without African American music? Visual art now has a big platform in Washington, D.C., so certainly our culture, our cooking, you name it, our style, it's our passport to the world and the world's passport to us.
There are people who throughout history have survived enormous struggles. You know, nothing has kept us down and nothing will keep us down. You know, we will always achieve.
Our people have resisted and we have created, and our imaginations have always been vibrant and brilliant. That has never died, and it won't ever die.
Blast through those barriers. You blast through one and there's another, and you don't give up. You say, we just got to keep on keeping on.
Something about being an African American and going through so much struggle and trauma makes us who we are. Just beautiful diamonds with so much love in our heart, with so much love to share, with so much love to give. I am so thankful that I am an African American. I thank God, please, I thank you for allowing me to be a Black man.
No longer watch from the shadows. We cannot. We must not. We will work to be an example of how we as brothers and sisters on this earth should treat each other. Now more than ever, the illusions of division threaten our very existence. We all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. But in times of crisis, the wise build bridges, while the foolish build barriers. We must find a way to look after one another as if we were one single tribe.
Daniel Bryant is a powerful motivational speaker. He is passionate about empowering others to define and fulfill their true purpose. Daniel serves communities by speaking and leading with all people to help them stay motivated in achieving their goals. Daniel has overcome obstacles in his own life that seemed insurmountable, but by the grace and power of God and his determination, he is an overcomer. Daniel attends North Carolina A&T State University as a business management major with a concentration in entrepreneurship and innovation. Daniel Bryant is the owner and creator of Me, Motivated and Empowered, a self-development and motivational platform. The mission of Me, Motivated and Empowered, is to inspire others to define and fulfill their true purpose through motivation and empowerment. Daniel is the son of Mr. Chris Bryant and Reverend Dr. Edie Morris Bryant. He has an older brother, Christopher Bryant, and younger sister, Sydney Bryant. Daniel continues to walk into each opportunity with great intention to exceed expectations and encourages others to do the same. Wesley Morris is a community organizer, facilitator, and senior pastor of Faith Community Church in Greensboro, North Carolina. His work centers on addressing the interlocking injustices of systemic racism and systemic poverty. Wesley currently serves as Vice President of the Pulpit Forum and as Associate Director for Southern Vision Alliance, SVA, where he works with emergent social justice organizations to develop racial, economic, and environmental justice solutions for collective liberation in the U.S. South. Prior to joining SVA, Wesley served as chaplain at Harlem Hospital and worked for more than a decade as a youth pastor and community organizer with the beloved Community Center, home to the nation's first community truth and reconciliation process. Through his solidarity projects in Cuba, Barbados, and Brazil, he has supported opening cultural and spiritual pathways to bridge the gap between Black, Indigenous people of color and the African diaspora. Wesley acknowledges the pain caused by systems of oppression and has committed his efforts towards achieving a more just and equitable world. From 2018 to 2019, he led the state of North Carolina as the coordinator of faith-based initiatives for the National Poor People's Campaign, a relaunch of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s nonviolent civil disobedience protest in over 40 states, addressing voter suppression laws, mass incarceration, and livable wages. Wesley earned a BA degree from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University and Master of Divinity from Union Theological Seminary in New York City. He enjoys traveling, listening to his vinyl record collection, and reading. James A. White is the Vice President of Leadership and Curriculum Development for the YMCA of the North United Health Group Equity and Innovation Center of Excellence. He currently serves as a board member for the Triangle Dr. Martin Luther King Committee. He's a past commission chairman for the North Carolina Martin Luther King Commission. He is also a regular guest on the WRAL radio sports talk show, The Sports Shop. Every Wednesday, he talks about the intersection between sports and race in a segment called More to the Story. He is a senior fellow for the Sagamore Institute, which is a think tank that is designed to turn innovative ideas into action that will shape policy and transform communities. He serves as an adjunct professor at the Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, and from 2016 to 2018, he co-taught a master's level seminar, Social Justice and Race Relations, alongside Dr. Mark Leiterbach. He has served as a principal consultant for several organizations and has writing honors and achievements, which include a contributing author for the American Outlook periodical. He received the 2009 Cameron Award for Writing Excellence in recognition of his article for the Association of YMCA Professionals Journal, Perspective Magazine, and was a contributing author for the book Planting Seeds of Hope, How to Reach African Youth, which was published by Moody Press. He has served as chapel speaker for the following organizations and teams: the Pro Bowl in Honolulu, Hawaii, Tennessee Titans, New York Jets, Atlanta Falcons, Cincinnati Bengals, New York Giants, and Miami Dolphins. James and his wife Cynthia moved to the Triangle area in 1992 in order for James to serve as a member of the teaching faculty at the Communication Center. While there, James served as a teacher and trainer in public speaking and in analyzing culture. He and Cynthia have been married for 34 wonderful years, and they have 3 adult children. James is a graduate of East Carolina University.
Amazing. I must start by acknowledging and thanking my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for allowing me to be among you all to experience this wonderful occasion. And also let me start by acknowledging our dynamic team that has contributed to this presentation for this evening. My social studies teammate, Ms. Valentina Bird, who has shown so much passion and drive to ensure a proper celebration of Black history. To Ms. Ashley Bennington, who is a major component to the team because of her proficiency in technology and also her ability to connect and engage students. And Ms. Bria Lewis, who's our principal intern here at Neal, who tirelessly addresses the needs of all of our students every single day. And of course, to all of our students and participants with this program, we thank you. February marks Black History Month, also known as African American History Month, which commemorates the accomplishments of Black people throughout history, and also serves as a reminder of the work that still needs to be done to ensure quality across all areas of life. Today, we celebrate influence that led and leads to that better quality of life. And one of these is education. It was a teacher who took a pay cut just so he could be a part of changing America's future by ensuring that students had equal access to quality education. If it wasn't for Carter G. Woodson, we wouldn't have Black History Month, and schools wouldn't honor Black History Month in February. Did you know that Black History Month actually started as Black History Week? So no, it's not just because February is the shortest month, but because it was actually a week in February that Carter G. Woodson coined Black History Week. I am Alec Virgil, and I am a middle grades education social studies teacher. And this is my first year teaching right here at this wonderful Neal Middle School. And so this is my home away from home. My home is Wilson, North Carolina. And I earned my Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from NC State University, home of the Wolfpack. And my areas of research are concerning with developing literacy in Black and multicultural communities and issues of diversity and inclusion in K through 12 classrooms and training for beginning teachers. We welcome you, audience. One way that you can support Black voices in the present and in the future is by reading books from Black authors, which can help you learn about the realities that many Black people face, as well as their unique ways of looking at the world. So here are some great contributors from our community. And audience, you're invited to post questions and comments in the chat for our panelists. We'll start the conversation by having each panelist speak for 5 minutes, and then I'll ask the questions that you submit in the chat. First, we have Mr. Daniel Bryant, who will bring our attention to cultural contributions. And then Mr. Wesley Morris, who will continue the conversation on pressing issues that still confront people of the African diaspora. And then we'll have Mr. James White, who will discuss what unites us as a culture. Additionally, the Black History Month hashtag on social media can remind us of just how much Black art and culture has influenced society today. So be sure to use it along with hashtag Black Futures Month. And I just posted it in the chat for you. And now, let's turn it over to our panelists. Daniel?
Greetings, everyone. I'm thankful to be on this platform, a platform that I'm willing and able to share with you all, to inspire and to be able to fellowship with you all, and trying to think of the knowledge and the advancements and the achievements of our people, Black people, African people. And so as I had the title and the task of talking about cultural contributions and what that means to us, I think it's important that we first define what culture means to us. We must know what our culture means to us, because if we don't define it for ourselves, there'll be someone that's willing to define it for us and to label us and to put stereotypes over our culture and to limit the power that it has. And so culture, broad definition, is customs and arts and social institutions and achievements all put together in a particular nation of people or a social group. And so as we talk about the African culture, the culture that binds us so closely together through hope and unity, it's important that we reflect on the blocks that make up the infrastructure of our culture. A culture that gives philosophy, lifestyle, and heritage, that sends waves to generation to generation. And as we examine some of those different aspects that we have already done so far, I can't, help to point out some of those aspects, like food, and you have food, you have music, you have arts, and you have music, you have philosophy. You have music that reggae music of Jamaica, that music that has so many different rhymes and the melodies that sing to your soul. Food that has been used so many times as medicine to heal, or comfort food for our consumption. Philosophy used in so many different ways, a philosophy through poetry, through rhymes, and different aspects of those different words that put together to be able to touch a particular subject. As we talk about even further in philosophy, the education system, so many things have come out of Africa that we don't even realize. The numeration system, astrology, so many different things that we've learned and that we're learning today were based and rooted in our culture. And see, as I look today and I think, we have, we've talked about all those different cultures, cultures of food, cultures of music, cultures of arts, the dancing, the different colors of the clothing that we wear. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out one culture that I feel like overpowers all cultures, and that's the culture of impact. And I implore all students on the call, all young people, including myself, as I'm a college student right now. I implore us all that we look up and we take on the charge to say, I'm going to have a culture of impact. See, I remember the saying from Jay-Z and the Migos that says, we're going to do it for the culture, and I remember that saying, but I say, let's do it for the culture of impact. See, we have impact in what we do and what we do for generations and generations to come. That's power. That's how we know that our culture will never be lost. Never lost in the systems of discrimination, never lost in the systems of prisons and different systems that look to break us apart. That's how we know that culture will stand and that our contributions will continue to be able to strive and to be able to build and groom young men and young women. And thank you for your time. That's all I have to say.
All right, I think it's on me. Thankful again for this opportunity to speak with Neal Middle School and everyone that has spoken before me. And let me just say the student presentations, again, are amazing. I am always learning and I marvel at not only your creativity, but your knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And so I am here to talk about some of the challenges that are faced by our coming together and relating across the African diaspora. I just have a couple of slides that says the differences that make a difference. Differences that make a difference. You can go to the next slide. I want to describe and talk a little bit about this phrase, Black futures and Black past. Black futures and Black past. I start with this framing statement that it is powerful when folks who have been separated by unauthorized means and told that they are not kindred, like, or familiar with one another, find the commonality that helps them bridge the gap that we call beloved community. We're able to be unified at times when cultures and systems of domination, colonial powers, and empire would rather exploit and take away the very spirit of life away from our diasporic dreams. But I am learned and I am trained to lift every voice and sing, and I am reminded that it is with a steady beat that we continue forward with our hopes and our dreams. I want to tell you a little bit about my own journey. This picture that you see, and you can go through them, the next one as well. These are pictures of when I had the opportunity to overcome the idea in my head with the reality of what was on the ground. You see, in my mind, I had an idea about the culture of Barbados, the culture of Cuba, the culture of Belize, but I was availed the opportunity to have access to travel. In these pictures, you see myself along with other student leaders bringing high schoolers from Greensboro, North Carolina, and the surrounding areas actually to the country of Barbados. We were able to overcome any kind of mischaracterization, any kind of false narratives by being able to take the youth to access what it means to be in concert and in relationship with folks who are just like them, yet separated by distance. In these opportunities, we were exchanging about politics, about music, about what did they like, what did we like, about our histories, and finding connecting points across this difference to say, why are we separated? What is the reason for us being apart and against each other? You can go to the next picture. These are pictures from presenting at the United Nations in Barbados. This was a host day where we were there on the land cultivating in a farm and learning about how is it done here, things that are familiar to us in the land that we're from. As we know, there is a long history of tearing down what God brought up. We know that in the historical record that slaves or enslaved people from Africa were trafficked in the transatlantic slave trade over to the Americas. There were only about 400,000 of those out of those millions that were transported to North America, in the United States, actually. The majority of enslaved Africans were transported into Latin America and into South America, Brazil with the largest amount. And so that's why you see cultures being shaped and shifted by that concentration of African people. As Daniel was mentioning, you know that there was musical traditions that were passed down and survived those forms of domination. You know that there were not only musical, but there were intellectual traditions of resistance to domination. There were also powers that were spiritually gained by being able to sustain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from their cultures. Even at the impetus of our languages being stripped away from our indigenous lands, we were still able to relate and find one another yet again. And I'll keep saying it, it is with a steady beat that we move forward. True to our God, true to our native land. The power of this presentation is not only to acknowledge the things that were wrong, but to acknowledge that we can do something about it. And so when I was in university at North Carolina A&T, there were associations, one for Caribbean students, another for African students, and then one for each state in the United States that students were from. We recognized and acknowledged that there were difficulties of us relating with each other. We came from school systems that didn't honor or teach us about the histories of each other's past. But what we saw when we began to work together, we said, your natural resources actually make it possible for what we do here. We decided to put our minds together and we created an African-American culture festival, which highlighted the connections between the Caribbeans, African-Americans, and African people. And so it's not only learning, it's going to be, what do we do about it now? What do we do with the knowledge that we gain, that we're not so far apart, that there's not so much of a difference? And actually, when we get together, there's this beautiful thing called a family reunion. When we pull together our streams and our streamlets of culture and history, we're able to make a large impact on what our future will be. So I thank Daniel for the definition of a cultural impact, because what you're doing now will actually bring forward an impact in the future. So that's how our Black past, our Black history relates to our Black now and our Black present, and relates to our Black future and our Black hope. And the last thing I'll share is this is a gift from Belize, and this is a gift from Guatemala, from African communities, where I've had the honor of being able to say, you know what, we're not so different. We have more alike than we do difference. And so in all these ways, I want to acknowledge the powers in the people, and the powers in the people and the politics that we address. In all these ways, I salute you for our Black past, our Black present, and our Black future. Thank you.
Well, I would have to agree with very much so, again, with Daniel and with Pastor Wesley. One of the realities as we think about this, and man, I love it, absolutely an impact, our future, and even the idea of our commonality and what we have together. Tonight, what I want to talk about is really a continuation of what you all have been talking about all this time. And I feel like I've been in the presence, and I know I've been in the presence of brilliance from the beginning on up even until now. But what I want to talk about is this idea of even our story in unity. I want to use, first of all, just three images, and allow the images to speak to you as well. In this first image, whenever we talk about Black history, we often think about this story of these two men who really begin to frame some of the understanding of Black history. And these are the icons that we talk about the most. But let me just say this, at some point when it comes to history, our history, and when I say our history, Black history is the history of the narrative of America. And even as you have a chance to see tonight, because of the diaspora, we're talking about a global reality. But often we allow others to tell the history for us. When it comes to these two men, Martin and Malcolm, our narratives have often been focusing on their difference and their opposition. And yet when we think about unity, often in the story for us as Black people, our unity has often been shaped by our tragedies and traumas that cause us to be led in triumph. You see, both Martin Luther King and Malcolm X had a great deal in common. Unfortunately, both of them died at the age of 39 years old. We often think they were much younger, but they were not, 39 years old. Both of them as well had childhoods that shaped their present, their past, and childhoods that probably set a course for their future. Malcolm, born to a family where there was a great deal of tragedy of losing his father at an early age and having a childhood that was disrupted and deconstructed, and yet Martin, born in a middle-class family, and yet both of them, even with their differences, had the similarity of understanding a great need for their unity and their future because of having a love for their people, and yet their philosophies were shaped even in their childhood years. You see, it was Malcolm who said it well. He said that the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. And Malcolm often understood that his life was about the future. And even in his death, he laid a framework of greatness that he would not see. Dr. King understood this same thing as Pastor Wesley talked about community. It was Dr. King who understood that concept of a beloved community. But Dr. King said these words: it doesn't matter where a man or woman stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where does he stand in challenge and controversy? And this last image that we often don't see of these two men by the end of their life, seeing that they were tied together, and their unity speaks to us of protection and provision in light of who we are as Black people. This next image is an image that you may be familiar with, but it's also a display of the brilliance and genius of our unity. If you were watching the Super Bowl, some of us can't even remember who won and who lost. But what we will never forget is the halftime show where Black brilliance and genius and the American story was on display. And even when we see this, there's a level of unity that we misunderstand, because even here, Dr. Dre, who was one of the key framers in what I would call hip hop moving forward into the whole narrative of American culture, but it was Dr. Dre who ended up discovering and connected with Snoop Dogg. And after him discovered Snoop Dogg, it was Dr. Dre who was connected to Eminem, and Eminem who was connected to 50 Cent. And yes, it was Dr. Dre as well who was connected to Kendrick Lamar, a lyrical genius who helps us understand the economy of words, to where even one word, he speaks volumes, who was a Pulitzer Prize winner, who helped us understand that hip hop is not just an art, but it is unified and philosophical and intellectual dynamics that we would never imagine. And Mary J. Blige, whose anthem still rings out, "No more drama." And so one of the realities is when you see this, You see a unity of being connected together to develop an art form that will speak to us, that speaks out of our African American story. Because very much so, even though there was a denial from the conservatory, a denial from the ballet schools, but we would come up with an art form where we could take cement, where we could take beats and rhymes and rhythms that really come out of our African journey, where we would make music from turntables, where we would take a party, where we could take spray paint and graffiti and come up with art that would still speak and change American culture. And that art continues to transcend into our imagination of an Afrofuturism that we saw up close and personal in this last image of unity. Because this last image of unity that you see here is not just a Marvel story, but there are layers of reality here. Because where did that last battle of the end game take place? It took place on the rich continent of Africa, where that imaginary world of Wakanda existed, but it's really not imaginary, because we all know that the minerals and things that really have led to the freedom of much of the world were often found and robbed from Africa, not only its people, but its resources. And vibranium that you see here, not only that T'Challa had, but Captain America's shield and the Winter Soldier's arm came from the minerals that came from Africa. But it was on the unity of that continent where the battle was fought and where the battle was won. And so we come full circle, even as we talked about tonight, a level of unity. So sometimes the imagination even gives us a clue into the reality that we live in. So tonight, there is so much at stake. There's still a need, and I feel like there are Martin and Malcolms and young women and men who will give us a future that we would never imagine. There's still, again, an art form that speaks to us. And that is in our imagination when it comes to unity can end up being a reality, no matter what the common opposition might be.
Amen. 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 Thank you to the panelists. I want to dive in a little bit here about the idea in this quote that says, "It is with a steady beat that we move forward." And finding connecting points between generations, because as a young teacher, I often run across conversations that are concerned with a separation between the younger generations and the older generations. And so in terms of connecting the points and figuring out why we are separated, like Mr. Morris discussed, panelists, I would like for you to finish this statement. We can empower our younger generations by So I'm gonna let y'all think on it for a second, but then fill in that blank, and I'll read it again. Finish that statement. We can empower our younger generations by.
I'll start by saying by loving them, and love in action, a way of accepting and trusting and believing in them and believing in their potential, even if their actuality doesn't line up with what I want to see. We often say here, what I'm actually doing is one thing. What I have the potential to do is a whole other thing. Am I able to see not only the person that is in front of me, the young person, connect with them, but also to know that God breathed breath into them and a spirit of life that gives them an immense potential. If no one ever saw Malcolm X, if they never saw Little Red, they see the transformed version, they see the outcome, but it's how do you see beyond what is shown to you? And so I would say accept them, love them, and have a belief that you're pulling the best out of them while pulling the best out of yourself. And I think that's a major point. Being able to connect with people, allow them the space to show up as they are, as who they are, and then do your best to support and nurture them by creating the environment. We have more of a way to impact the environment of young people than impacting young people themselves. If we can create a loving, caring, and accepting environment, we're able to do so much more on their behalf, I think.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that.
That definitely ties into one of my points when we talk about connecting and loving the youth. To empower the youth, I think it's important that we be that connecting structure, right? That bridge that connects, hope and unity, or love and support between those young people and their hopes to prosperity, or what their goals are to achieve. See, I think sometimes there's a cutoff, or there's a gap in between their hope, or what they want to accomplish in this world, and the things that they think that they can accomplish in this world, because of what they see in the media, because of the things that are put in front of them, telling them otherwise, based on their skin color, the things that are putting into their mind, say that you can't do this, or you're not willing to do this. So I think for us, I don't want to say older generation, because I'm really not, I'm still young, but we have to take that charge to say that we're going to be that connecting bridge. We're going to be that structure that can allow them to be able to ride through, and they can walk on our bridge to connect to their prosperity, because we're the utmost strong structure that can hold them up. Because when they try to find connection with other people, when they try to find connection through other bridges and other people that don't know our culture and that don't know what it is to be Black, that structure is likely to fall and crumble to their feet. So it's important that us, people of their color, people of their culture, the people that we connect with, it's important that we become the structure that allow our young people to reach their prosperity.
Yeah, I waited to go last because I'm the oldest one here.
I'm glad, because I was getting ready to punch out. I said, Mr. White, I know you got some good insight for us, man.
Well, I think part of it is the older generation can put itself in the position of leaders who learn. I think all too often we forget that the younger generation will complete the books that we were never able to write. And therefore, we're only in chapters 1 and 2, but they will be the ones who will finish the chapters that we laid the framework for them to write. And I think also the reality is that this generation now is experiencing a level of technology and understanding information in such a way that those of us from an older generation has to be learners, but we have to have a humility even as we engage, to where we end up really, I think, celebrating and coming alongside before we critique, and then be willing to understand, because we're in this technological change. When you look at history, global history, whenever there was technological change, it really was whatever you ended up in planning in the younger generation that led to the genius and beauty of that change. And so I think those of us who are older have to say, there is something that we have to learn. Let me humbly learn, while still giving guidance. And our wisdom has to be relational rather than judgmental. And so it requires a deeper level of relationship. Because the other thing I would say too, this is Black History Month, but we've encountered for the first time in Black history, I think, the buildup of a generational gap. At one time in the Black community, there wasn't a generational gap. I could show you, again, any kind of musician and artist, and we all listen to the same music. But now there's a huge generational gap that exists, that happened as a result of hip hop, that really led to a generational divide that's even true in the Black community. Therefore, those of us who are older have to become learners again.
Yeah, I like that idea that, as an older generation, you come aside a younger person as a learner, right? That is significantly important. And I want us to unpack that just a little bit more, because I know we have a lot of teachers and educators who are with younger people every single day. And I think that one of the issues that we face in education is the lack of the propensity, the lack of the willingness to listen to a younger person and to learn and put ourselves in the position of a learner. I want us to unpack that a little bit more as we talk about how we can connect with the younger generation. I have a couple of my students that are eighth grade students that are here as well. And I want them to feel free to leave comments and questions as well in the chat, and the rest of the audience to do the same. But let's kind of unpack that idea a little bit more. And Mr. Wesley, you talked about culture shifting and culture shaping. Do you think, sir, that that you can kind of dive in a little bit more? What does that mean? How do we shift our culture to move forward as a learner, as older people? Yes, we are the leaders and we're the role models. And how do we kind of get beside that idea that we are, it's our way or the highway? How do we get beside that idea and come in as a learner instead, and kind of partner up with the children?
Yeah, I would say first thing that comes to my mind is a phrase I put in the chat: seek to understand before you seek to be understood. That has been something that has granted me many gifts in this life. And after using that as a way to approach anybody, young or old, that I'm here in the position to learn. As Dr. White says, I actually want to, because me filling up the air with what I think actually can take away from what I need to know. There's things that I assume, there are things that I can presume. That's how our minds work. We automatically begin to associate what we see with what we've learned in the past, but that does a disservice to the ability to be present in the moment and say, look, there's something new happening here. And the new thing is that I believe in another principle. There's a principle that says that we are existing in a time of unauthorized separation, where we are made to believe that we are supposed to be apart from one another, that isolation and doing it myself and having an I focus rather than a we focus is actually a way to success. And when we get to the end of that road, it doesn't lead us to a deeper community. It leads us to a deeper individualism. And that's the suffering. And so I want to build on the relational aspect of how we begin to understand, seek to understand before I seek to be understood. Because if I stay authentic and I don't try to, put on clothes that, my nephew might be able to relate to, if I try to dress like him, no, I need to be authentically myself. Be and show up how I am as who I am, and be ready to receive the other, because really people will feel you. They'll know who you are by how you are when you show up in a space. But those two things have really shown up for me: seeking to understand before I seek to be understood. And then secondly, not believing or not giving myself over to unauthorized separation. I believe we're more unified than we are apart.
Thank you. Okay. If you're welcome to chime in on that, Mr. Bryant or Dr. White, if you would like.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, definitely. So I would definitely speak to that education piece that you talked about with our teachers and our students, and the knowledge and experience that our students are to offer to our teachers. First, I would like to give a thank you and a big thanks to all of our educators throughout, especially the state of North Carolina, because I know, behind the scenes, the hard work that you put in, the times and the hours that y'all clock in, not only to see exceeding growth through your students, but then even keeping your own self-wellness up to par, that stress level. So I applaud all educators and administrators that look to do that, continue to see exceeding growth through all their students. So first, I'd like to start off with that. But then also, I remember the words, my mother always saying, slow to speak and quick to listen. That's something I think we all can do. And that doesn't have an age range. That's not only for little kids. That's not only for, 18-year-olds that don't want to listen. That's for everyone, slow to speak, but then quick to listen. Because I feel like something about respect about any person is that not only that I respect you as a person, but then I respect the things and the experiences that you have. I respect the things before you even tell me. I respect you enough that I can acquire something from you to make me a better person. And I think when we have that deep level of respect for each person and each people that we encounter each and every day, we're able to receive those things that can further develop ourselves. And we're not stuck in that mud that says that I've been there, I've done that, I've seen it all. We have to get out of that. And even as young people too, just because we're young and we have more access to things and we can see stuff online, the older generation always has that way to phrase something or put something in your ear that can make you, think twice or think again. And so I think for every single body that we have to, really have that open mind and that open heart too. Because sometimes you can listen to somebody, they just talking, but it's going through one ear. But have that open heart so you can actually receive their message. Let their message simmer in your soul. And that's how you truly receive someone and what they're trying to convey to you. So I think that's the biggest thing that everyone should practice.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think and this is, I'll say this real quickly, I think, and this is for teachers that are here, our pedagogies have to be challenged to where I think now, because there is so much information that even our younger students have access to, that we may have to begin thinking, how can we become good facilitators versus those who feel like we contain all the knowledge that one needs. And that's a different kind of approach to teaching. That means I have to work to facilitate an environment that will cause people to want to eat the meal that I'm setting before them rather than force feeding. And so our whole method of how we teach and how we give knowledge, because right now, you're not the smartest person, and I know you're not the smartest person because I can Google and check in just a moment on my technology. So it is not impressive the amount of knowledge that you have, but the skills and abilities that you have to be able to deliver that knowledge. That probably is going to be one of the keys when we talk about engaging this younger generation. Some of us will have to learn, how can we be more effective facilitators in creating the space for people to want to eat the meal of knowledge? Because that's really, in order for the students who have really presented what they presented, is because there's some teachers that have been doing some incredible job of laying some truths out that this generation of middle schoolers have really embraced. But I think we're gonna have to figure out how to learn how to do more than that.
And I have one more quick thing that I have to say, especially for students, because I know there's some students on the panel. Also take time to develop your knowledge and your ways to be able to convey your emotions and convey your experience. I think sometimes that gets lost too, where students have so much stuff to give and so many things to give and to ask questions and stuff, but they don't know how to convey it. So I think that we have to take practical steps on the student's part to be able to learn how can I get what I'm thinking, how can I get that across in a respectful way, in a way that my teacher will understand.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, man. That was right on point, right on time. Thank you all for your excellent input. We really do appreciate you for being here. And this evening, we covered some really great pieces. We talked about empowerment and culture, foods and music and dances, things of that nature. We talked about finding connecting points and figuring out how we are separated, why we are separated. So I encourage you to think about traveling and why traveling is so important, and getting outside of your neighborhoods and outside of your communities and seeing some other Black cultures and how things are done differently. And we also talked about our own history and knowing that Black history is American history, and that for so long and for too long and too often, we let other people tell our histories. And so we get to shape our histories because we are our history and we are our present. We're not just the future, we are the present. So we have to do something right now to make a change. And remember, I'm going to leave you with this. It takes a village to raise a child. And therefore, the strength of the community is the people. And the strength of the people is the community. Again, I am Alec Virgil. From the classroom to reality, we are it. Thank you for everyone being here on this evening. God bless you. And we will definitely be looking forward to connecting again.
Thank you, Alec.
Well, let Ms. Bennett follow up with the performance.
And the truth, you know love is all we